What if the solution to high gas prices was invented 50 years ago and then murdered? What if the cure for cancer was found in 1934 and then burned by the government? From cars that ran on tap water to ancient death rays that we still can't replicate today, everything you are about to see was real, and everything you are about to see was supposed to be forgotten. These are the 111 forbidden inventions that history and the government tried to erase. Let's dig them up. But before we open the files, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because if this video mysteriously disappears tomorrow, at least you will know the truth. Are you ready? Let's start. 1. Have you ever wondered why we still pay for gas when Stanley Meyer built a dune buggy that ran entirely on fresh tap water? This regular guy claimed he could drive across the entire United States using only 22 gallons of H2O, which absolutely terrified the massive oil monopolies. During a suspicious dinner at a restaurant in 1998, Stanley took one sip of juice and suddenly clutched his neck in total agony. He sprinted into the parking lot and screamed, "They poisoned me," before dropping dead right on the cold asphalt. His car and all his research disappeared forever. Was Stanley murdered to keep us addicted to the pump? 2. Imagine a car so perfect that the government and big oil had to team up to literally kidnap and murder it in the desert. The GM EV1 was a legendary electric vehicle from the 90s that required zero gasoline and had a massive cult following of happy American drivers. Instead of celebrating this success, General Motors sent tow trucks to forcibly snatch the cars back from owners who were literally crying and begging to keep them. They hauled these pristine machines to a secret junkyard and crushed them into scrap metal to protect their precious oil profits. Why would a company destroy its own future just to keep us buying gas? 3. Did you know that Nikola Tesla designed a terrifying particle beam weapon called the Death Ray that could allegedly melt warplanes from hundreds of miles away? The genius inventor wanted to create an invisible wall of energy around every country to make the very idea of war totally impossible for everyone. He called it Teleforce and kept the secret blueprints hidden in his mind while living in a dusty New York hotel. Just hours after Tesla passed away in 1943, the FBI swarmed his room like a group of frantic spies to seize every single scrap of his research. Why was the government so incredibly desperate to steal the notes of a penniless old man? 4. Have you ever felt like your light bulbs are designed to burn out exactly when you are broke because of a secret billionaire meeting in 1924? The Phoebus Cartel was a shady group of light bulb CEOs who gathered in a smoke-filled room to intentionally sabotage their own products for profit. Before this meeting, bulbs could last for decades, but these greedy guys forced everyone to lower the lifespan to exactly 1,000 hours. They even slapped massive fines on any company that dared to make a bulb that lasted too long. How many trillions of dollars have we literally thrown in the trash because of this one secret handshake? 5. What if the actual cure for cancer was discovered in 1934 by a man using nothing but weird radio frequencies to shatter deadly viruses? Royal Rife built a massive machine that supposedly vibrated cancer cells until they exploded like a glass breaking from a high note. Every single patient in his first clinical trial was fully cured, but the medical establishment went into a total state of panic over their lost profits. Suddenly, his laboratory was burned to the ground by a mysterious arsonist, and any doctor caught using the machine was sued into total silence. Did the medical industry trade a global cure for a lifetime of expensive treatments? 6. Can you imagine a thin plastic paste so powerful that it could protect a delicate raw egg from the heat of a literal nuclear blast? An amateur chemist named Maurice Ward invented starlight in his kitchen and shocked the entire world by showing it resisting temperatures of 10,000 degrees. Every military general and tech giant on the planet tried to buy the secret formula, but Maurice was a stubborn guy who refused to sell. He took the mysterious chemical recipe to his grave in 2011, leaving the most advanced heat shield in human history a total mystery. Why would one man choose to let the world burn instead of sharing his secret? 7. Did you ever hear about the man who built a giant machine made of metal pipes that could actually pull rain clouds out of a clear blue sky? Wilhelm Reich called his invention the Cloudbuster, and he successfully saved Maine from a massive drought while everyone watched in total disbelief. Instead of a Nobel Prize, the government gave him a prison cell, and the FDA literally burned his books in a giant parking lot bonfire. They claimed his research on organ energy was a total scam, despite the fact that the machine actually worked for the farmers. Was the government terrified that someone could finally control the weather without their permission? 8. Why on earth are we driving fragile metal cars when Henry Ford once built a vehicle made of hemp that was 10 times stronger than steel? Back in 1941, the legendary car maker used vegetable fibers to create a body that didn't even dent when he hit it with a massive sledgehammer. He even designed the engine to run on clean hemp fuel, which would have totally ruined the growing oil industry. Shortly after the prototype was revealed, the entire project was buried and forgotten as the government started a massive war on the very plants Ford used. Did the oil tycoons kill the strongest and cleanest car ever made? 9. Is there a secret television hidden deep inside the Vatican vaults that allows the Pope to watch a live broadcast of the actual crucifixion of Christ? A Benedictine monk named Father Ernetti claimed he helped build the chronovisor, which was a device that could tune into the frequencies of past historical events. He described seeing famous speeches and biblical moments in high definition before the church allegedly dismantled the machine because it was too dangerous for humanity. Skeptics say it is just a wild legend, but many believers wonder why the blueprints were suddenly classified as top secret. Could you imagine the chaos if we saw the real history? 10. What if the most advanced technology we have today was actually stolen from a secret stash of Nazi anti-gravity patents after World War II? Through a covert mission called Operation Paperclip, the United States government secretly smuggled thousands of German scientists and their weirdest inventions across the ocean. These files included designs for supersonic jets and mysterious glowing bells that supposedly defied the laws of physics and gravity. Most of these groundbreaking documents were erased from public records and locked away in underground military bases where they remain hidden today. Are we living in a world of suppressed technology while using outdated tools from the past? 11. Have you ever heard the legend of a liquid fire so powerful it could burn on top of ocean water and destroy entire wooden fleets in seconds? The Byzantine Empire possessed a terrifying secret weapon called Greek fire that functioned like a prehistoric flamethrower and saved their capital from countless naval invasions. This mysterious chemical concoction was so highly classified that only the emperors knew the true recipe, and they guarded it with their literal lives. When the empire finally collapsed, the secret formula vanished from the face of the earth, leaving modern scientists totally baffled about how it worked. How did an ancient civilization create napalm over 1,000 years ago? 12. Can you believe that a man in the 1930s invented a carburetor that allowed a standard car to get over 200 miles per gallon? Charles Pogue created a device that vaporized gasoline into a super thin mist, which made engines run with unbelievable efficiency for the time. As soon as the news broke about this incredible money-saving invention, Charles was allegedly harassed by corporate thugs, and his workshop was repeatedly ransacked. Eventually, he was pressured into total silence, and his revolutionary technology was scrubbed from history to keep the oil money flowing into the big pockets. Why are we still getting terrible gas mileage nearly a century later? 13. Did you know that ancient Indian texts written thousands of years ago contain detailed blueprints for massive flying machines called Vimanas? These legendary scripts describe golden ships powered by mercury vortex engines that could fly to different cities and even into outer space with ease. While most historians dismiss these stories as wild fairy tales, the technical descriptions read exactly like modern aerospace engineering manuals from a high-tech lab. Some theorists believe these machines were real and that the technology was suppressed or hidden by a secret society to prevent global chaos. Could our ancestors have been more technologically advanced than we are today in 2026? 14. Would you lose your mind if you dropped a glass bowl and it simply dented like a cheap soda can instead of shattering into a million pieces? An ancient Roman craftsman presented an incredible invention called flexible glass to Emperor Tiberius, hoping to become a wealthy hero for his amazing discovery. Instead of rewarding the man, the emperor ordered him to be beheaded on the spot because he feared the new material would make gold totally worthless. He destroyed the workshop and erased all records of the process to protect the Roman economy from a total collapse. Was a world-changing material sacrificed just to keep the wealthy elite in power? 15. Have you ever wondered if the entire cryptocurrency revolution was actually started by a mysterious failed project called Sloodle years before Bitcoin existed? This digital currency was designed to be the primary money for an early version of the metaverse and featured a working code that was surprisingly ahead of its time. Despite having a functional system and a dedicated group of developers, the project suddenly vanished from the internet without a single trace or explanation. All the data and the original source code were scrubbed from servers, leaving only weird rumors and broken links behind in the digital dust. Who was so terrified of a decentralized currency back in the early days? 16. What if I told you that a giant system of mirrors once turned the sun into a massive laser beam that could incinerate entire wooden warships? The legendary inventor Archimedes allegedly used a heat ray to burn the Roman fleet during the siege of Syracuse by focusing solar energy onto their hulls. For centuries, historians laughed at this story and called it a total myth, until MIT students proved it was actually possible with basic bronze shields. Even though the science is real, the specific secret of how Archimedes tracked the moving ships so accurately has been lost to the sands of time. How did one man defeat an entire navy with light? 17. Have you ever wondered why modern blacksmiths with all their high-tech tools still cannot recreate the legendary strength of ancient Damascus steel? These mythical swords from the Middle Ages were famous for being incredibly sharp and flexible enough to slice through a falling silk scarf or a stone. The secret forging technique involved a complex process of folding metal that created beautiful watery patterns on the blade, but the recipe died out in the 18th century. Despite using advanced microscopes and chemical analysis today, nobody can perfectly replicate the original masterpiece blades that dominated the ancient battlefields. How did the greatest metal secret in human history just simply disappear? 18. Could you imagine finding a rusted hunk of bronze from a shipwreck that turned out to be a fully functional analog computer from ancient Greece? The Antikythera mechanism was discovered in 1901, and it featured a complex system of gears that could predict eclipses and planetary movements with perfect astronomical precision. This device was over 1,000 years ahead of its time, and nothing even close to its complexity appeared again until the 14th century in Europe. It suggests that the ancient Greeks were on the verge of an industrial revolution before their knowledge was wiped out by war and time. What other mechanical wonders are currently rotting under the ocean? 19. Did you know that King Mithridates was so terrified of being assassinated that he created a universal antidote that made him immune to every known poison? This legendary medicine called Mithridatium was a secret blend of 65 different ingredients that supposedly protected the human body from any deadly toxin on the planet. After the king died, the Romans desperately tried to copy the formula, but the exact proportions and the rare herbs required were never fully documented correctly. The recipe for this miracle cure all was lost forever during the chaotic fall of the Roman Empire, leaving us vulnerable to toxins today. Could we have ended the fear of poisoning centuries ago? 20. Have you ever imagined a world where electricity is completely free and beamed through the air like a Wi-Fi signal to every single home? Nikola Tesla built a massive tower in New York called Wardenclyffe because he wanted to give the entire planet unlimited wireless power without using any ugly wires or expensive poles. When his wealthy investor JP Morgan realized he couldn't put a meter on the air and charge people for the energy, he immediately cut all the funding. The giant tower was eventually torn down for scrap metal, and Tesla's dream of a free energy utopia was crushed by corporate greed. Why are we still paying monthly bills for basic human needs? 21. Have you ever dreamed of driving a massive classic car from El Paso to New York on just 2 gallons of gas without stopping at a single pump? In the late 70s, a mechanic named Tom Ogle invented a legendary vapor fuel system that allowed his heavy Ford Galaxy to get a mind-blowing 100 miles per gallon. He replaced the traditional carburetor with a pressurized tank that turned liquid gas into a super-efficient cloud of fumes that doubled the engine's power. Shortly after he went public with his invention, Tom died under very mysterious circumstances at the young age of 24, and his blueprints vanished into thin air. Did the big oil companies delete the man who solved the energy crisis? 22. What if I told you that 2 world-class scientists discovered a way to create infinite clean energy in a simple glass jar on a kitchen table. In 1989, Stanley Ponce and Martin Fleischmann announced they had achieved cold fusion, which is the holy grail of physics that provides endless power without any dangerous radiation. Instead of receiving the Nobel Prize, they were immediately attacked by the scientific establishment and mocked in the media until their reputations were totally destroyed. Even though hundreds of other laboratories have since reported similar successful results, the technology remains blacklisted from every major university and mainstream textbook today. Why is the world so afraid of a power source that costs almost nothing? 23. Have you ever heard of a magical purple wand from the early 1900s that people claimed could cure everything from headaches to deadly infections? The violet ray was a high-frequency Tesla coil device that was found in almost every doctor's office and wealthy home across America because it actually seemed to work. Users reported incredible healing results, but the FDA suddenly declared the device a total fraud in a massive nationwide crackdown during the 1940s. They ordered the destruction of thousands of these machines and threatened to jail anyone caught selling the technology to the public for medical use. Was this a genuine safety concern, or did the pharmaceutical industry want to eliminate the competition? 24. Could you imagine a tiny golden flower so incredibly valuable that it was worth more than its weight in pure Roman gold? Silphium was a mysterious plant that grew only in North Africa and was used by the ancient Romans as a perfect and totally safe method of birth control. It was so effective and popular that the Romans literally harvested it into total extinction, and the last known stalk was supposedly eaten by the Emperor Nero as a weird snack. Modern botanists have searched the hills of Libya for centuries, but the most effective natural medicine in history has completely disappeared from the face of the earth. Did we lose the secret to natural family planning forever? 25. Have you ever wondered if there was an ancient drug so powerful it could wipe away every single sad memory and heartache with just one single sip? In the famous story of the Odyssey, a mysterious substance called nepenthe was used to drown out sorrow and make people forget their deepest pains and miseries instantly. While many scholars think it was just a poetic myth, ancient records suggest it was a real plant medicine traded across the Mediterranean by secret societies. The source of this magical plant was lost during the Dark Ages, and nobody has been able to identify the true botanical origin of the drug since then. What would you give to forget your worst day forever? 26. Did you know that the most beautiful music ever heard by human ears is trapped inside a secret chemical recipe that died with a single family? Antonio Stradivari built violins in the 1700s that produced a hauntingly perfect sound that no modern technology or supercomputer has ever been able to truly replicate. Many experts believe the secret lies in a mysterious varnish made of volcanic ash and secret minerals that protected the wood and enhanced the acoustics in a magical way. When the last Stradivari family member passed away, the specific formula for the coating was never written down and vanished into history forever. Why can we build rockets to Mars but not a simple wooden violin? 27. What if a toy airplane could fly forever without any batteries or fuel, using only the invisible magnetic energy surrounding the entire Earth? In the 1920s, an inventor named Lester Hendershot demonstrated a fuel-less generator that pulled electricity right out of thin air to power motors and light up light bulbs. He showed his incredible device to high-ranking military officials and famous pilots who were all absolutely stunned by the constant stream of free energy. However, as soon as he tried to market the invention, he was reportedly met with death threats and a mysterious accident that left him unable to finish his work. Is the secret to free flight hidden in a basement somewhere? 28. How did the legendary Vikings navigate through thick fog and total darkness without a single compass or a clear view of the stars? For centuries, historians laughed at the idea of Viking sunstones, which were mythical crystals that could allegedly see the sun through heavy clouds and even below the horizon. Everyone thought it was just a cool campfire story until scientists recently discovered a special type of crystal in an ancient shipwreck that actually acts as a natural GPS. This incredible optical technology allowed the Vikings to rule the seas, but the knowledge of how to use these stones disappeared for 1,000 years after they vanished. What other ancient magic is actually just forgotten science? 29. Have you ever wondered why we use massive, expensive ventilators in hospitals when a cheap and simple mechanical lung was invented decades ago? During the polio crisis, the iron lung saved thousands of lives using basic air pressure, and it was incredibly reliable and very easy to maintain for long periods. Despite its proven success, the technology was largely phased out and erased in favor of high-tech electronic machines that cost a fortune and require constant, expensive repairs. Many people believe the shift was driven by medical companies who realized they couldn't make enough profit off a simple metal tube that lasts forever. Are we paying a premium for machines designed to be expensive? 30. Would you believe that a man in the 1950s claimed to cure terminal cancer using nothing but a simple herbal paste made from common backyard weeds? Harry Hoxsey treated thousands of patients at his clinics, and even won several court cases against the medical board by proving his secret formula actually worked on skin tumors. The government was so enraged by his success that they labeled him the most dangerous quack in history and spent millions of dollars to shut down every single one of his clinics. They eventually chased him out of the country and banned his research, which forced the treatment into a small underground clinic in Mexico. Why was a cheap herbal remedy treated like a national security threat? 31. Have you ever wondered if the military secretly perfected a real flying saucer back in the 50s while the public was busy watching black and white cartoons? The Avrocar was a circular aircraft built by the United States and Canada that used a massive central fan to hover and zoom across the ground like a UFO. Officially, the government canceled the project because they claimed it was too unstable and could only hover a few feet off the dirt like a glorified lawnmower. However, many whistleblowers suggest the project actually went deep, black ops, and evolved into the mysterious stealth crafts people report seeing over Area 51 today. Did they really fail or just move the party underground? 32. Can you imagine a piece of glassware that actually changes its entire color depending on what kind of liquid you pour inside of it? The Lycurgus cup is a Roman masterpiece that looks green in normal light, but glows a deep ruby red when a candle is placed inside the glass. Modern scientists were shocked to discover that the ancient Romans were actually using advanced nanotechnology by mixing tiny particles of silver and gold into the molten glass. This level of molecular engineering was supposedly impossible for people wearing sandals and togas, and the secret of how they did it vanished for 2,000 years. How did ancient Romans master science we only just discovered? 33. What if I told you that ancient people were using portable electric batteries to gold-plate their jewelry thousands of years before Benjamin Franklin flew his kite? The Baghdad battery is a collection of mysterious clay pots found in Iraq that contain copper cylinders and iron rods, which produce a measurable electrical charge when filled with vinegar. While mainstream historians try to claim these were just storage jars for old scrolls, many engineers have proven they work perfectly as primitive cells for electroplating metals. The knowledge of how to harness the spark of life was lost when the ancient civilizations collapsed, leaving us in the dark for centuries. Were our ancestors more electric than we think? 34. Did you know that the United States government once conducted a massive raid to seize and burn wooden boxes that claimed to trap invisible life energy? Wilhelm Reich invented the Organet energy accumulator, which was a simple cabinet lined with metal that he claimed could heal the body and improve your mood just by sitting inside. Instead of ignoring him, the FDA went on a total warpath and obtained a court order to physically destroy every single machine and burn all his research papers in a giant fire. They even threw the scientist in prison, where he mysteriously died just days before he was scheduled for release. Why was a wooden box considered a threat to national security? 35. Have you ever heard about the giant electrical pier Nikola Tesla wanted to build to turn the entire Atlantic Ocean into a massive power source? This project was supposed to be the second phase of his wireless energy dream and would have allowed ships to sail across the sea without ever carrying a single lump of coal. Tesla claimed he could pull limitless electricity from the Earth's magnetic field, using a series of specialized underwater towers placed along the coastline. Before he could prove it worked, his investors got nervous and the entire project was dismantled for scrap metal to pay off his mounting debts. Did we trade free ocean power for expensive oil tankers? 36. Would you believe there is a special welding torch that uses nothing but common water and a little bit of electricity to slice through solid steel like butter? An inventor named Denny Klein created a water-powered torch that performs electrolysis on the fly to create a super hot flame that is surprisingly cool to the touch. This incredible technology produces zero pollution and could theoretically replace every dangerous gas tank in every workshop across the country with a simple jug of tap water. Even though the patents exist and the demonstrations are legendary, the product has mysteriously failed to hit the mainstream market for decades. Are the gas companies keeping this liquid fire underwater? 37. Have you ever wished you could actually smell the delicious food you see in pictures while scrolling through your favorite social media feed? In the early 2000s, a company created a device called the iSmell, which was a small computer peripheral that could mix and spray thousands of different scents across the internet. It was a total viral sensation and promised to change the way we experience movies and games by adding a whole new dimension of reality to our screens. Suddenly, the funding was pulled, and the company went completely silent while the patents were locked away in a corporate vault where they remain today. Why was the world denied the chance to smell the digital roses? 38. Can you imagine a microscope so powerful that it allows you to see a live virus wiggling around in high definition and full color? Royal Rife didn't just build a cancer machine, but he also created the universal microscope, which used complex light prisms to view tiny microbes that are invisible to modern electron microscopes. He claimed he could see the actual life cycle of bacteria changing forms, which would have totally rewritten every single medical textbook in the world. Instead of celebrating his genius, mystery men broke into his lab and smashed his expensive prototypes into tiny pieces of glass. What secrets of the microscopic world are being hidden from our eyes? 39. Did you know that the military once spent millions of dollars on a top-secret plan to use a swarm of bats carrying tiny incendiary bombs to win a war? Project X-Ray was a real operation where thousands of bats were fitted with miniature timers and released to hide in the attics of enemy buildings before exploding. During a secret test in New Mexico, the bat bombs worked so well that the bats accidentally burned down the entire military base and the general's car. The project was immediately classified and shut down because the brass was terrified of a weapon they couldn't control. Why did the government choose to erase the most effective tiny soldiers ever? 40. What if a car engine had no moving pistons or loud valves and could run for 1,000,000 miles with almost zero maintenance? Nikola Tesla invented a bladeless turbine that was incredibly efficient and could run on steam or gas with more power than any engine of its size. He offered the design to the major car companies, but they all turned him down because they had already invested billions into the clunky piston engines we still use today. This elegant machine was so simple it was practically indestructible. But it was buried by an industry that profits from selling you spare parts. Are we still using old technology just to keep the repair shops open? 41. Have you ever heard of a massive aircraft carrier made entirely of frozen blocks of ice and wood pulp that was designed to be unsinkable by torpedoes? During the peak of World War II, the British military started Project Habakkuk, which was a plan to build a 2,000-foot ship using a weird material called pykrete. This frozen slush was stronger than concrete and didn't melt easily, making it the ultimate mobile base for fighter jets in the middle of the Atlantic. Despite successful testing of a small prototype, the entire project was suddenly scrapped and the documents were sealed in high-security vaults. Did they realize an ice ship was too cheap for the military budget? 42. Would you believe that a morning sickness pill sold as totally safe was actually a global disaster that the government tried to scrub from your memory? Thalidomide was marketed in the 50s as a miracle drug for pregnant women, but it caused thousands of babies to be born with missing limbs and severe defects. While the horror is well known, the true story of how high-ranking officials ignored the early warnings to protect pharmaceutical profits is often erased from the history books. This massive cover-up led to the creation of the modern FDA regulations we have today, but many files remain classified. Why are the names of the people who approved it still hidden? 43. Did you know the United States military once spent real taxpayer money trying to develop a chemical weapon that would make enemy soldiers find each other irresistible? The gay bomb was a non-lethal proposal that involved dropping a cloud of powerful female pheromones over enemy troops to cause a total breakdown in discipline and morale. Scientists actually believed that a sudden surge of attraction would make soldiers drop their guns and stop fighting each other entirely in the middle of a war zone. The project was officially laughed off as a ridiculous joke, but many researchers wonder if the formula was perfected and moved to a black site. Can you imagine a war being won by a giant hug? 44. What if the steam engine was actually invented 2,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, and the Industrial Revolution was delayed because it was treated as a toy? Hero of Alexandria built a spinning metal sphere called the Iolipile that used steam pressure to rotate at high speeds for the entertainment of wealthy kings. Instead of using this incredible power to build trains or factories, the ancient world simply watched it spin, and then eventually forgot all about it when the Great Library burned. If the Romans had used this technology to build steam-powered chariots, the entire history of the world would look like a sci-fi movie. Why did humanity wait so long to start the engine? 45. Can you imagine a giant mechanical claw that could reach out from a city wall and lift an entire Roman warship right out of the water? The legendary inventor Archimedes allegedly built a massive crane called the Claw that dropped heavy weights on ships or flipped them upside down during the siege of Syracuse. For centuries, historians thought this was a total exaggeration until modern engineers built a replica and proved it could actually snatch a boat like a toy in a bathtub. Despite the proof, the original blueprints and the mechanical secrets of the Claw vanished into history when the city was finally conquered. How did one man build a robot that could fight a whole navy? 46. Have you ever wondered why we use toxic gasoline when the inventor of the diesel engine intended for us to run our cars on peanut oil? Rudolf Diesel demonstrated his revolutionary engine at the World's Fair and bragged that farmers could grow their own fuel and never have to buy a single drop from a big company. In 1913, while he was traveling on a steamship across the English Channel, Rudolf mysteriously vanished from the deck in the middle of the night. His body was found floating weeks later, and his vision of a vegetable oil-powered world was immediately buried by the rising oil industry. Was he pushed overboard to protect the future of the gas pump? 47. Did you know that a scientist in the 1920s claimed to have discovered a way to use high-voltage electricity to make objects fly without any wings? Townsend Brown discovered a phenomenon called electrogravitics, where a simple metal disc would lift into the air when charged with a massive amount of static energy. He spent his entire life trying to show the military that we could build silent anti-gravity ships that move faster than the speed of sound. Instead of funding his work, the government classified his research, and the mainstream scientific community started calling his discoveries a total mistake or a hoax. If we have the secret to anti-gravity, why are we still using jet fuel? 48. Would you be shocked to learn that the United States government has a secret law that allows them to seize any invention that they think might threaten national security? The Inventions Secrecy Act of 1951 gives the Patent Office the power to place a gag order on inventors and lock their work in a vault if it is deemed too advanced or dangerous. There are currently over 5,000 patents that have been hidden from the public, including new energy sources and medical breakthroughs that we are not allowed to see. This means someone could have invented a cure for everything or a way to fly to the stars, and we would never know. Who gets to decide which future we are allowed to have? 49. Why are we constantly buying new light bulbs when there is a bulb in a California fire station that has been burning continuously for over 120 years? The Centennial light was built before the Phoebus cartel decided to make bulbs fragile, and it proves that we have the technology to make lights that last a lifetime. Modern light bulbs are intentionally engineered with a thin filament that is designed to snap after a certain number of hours, so you are forced to keep spending money. This is the ultimate proof that the products we buy today are intentionally worse than what our great-grandparents had in their homes. Why do we accept a world where everything is built to break? 50. Have you ever heard the story of the man who invented a wireless telephone in 1902 and demonstrated it to the public long before radio was even common? Nathan Stubblefield used induction coils to send his voice through the air and through the ground to receivers located hundreds of feet away on his farm. He was offered millions of dollars for his patents, but he was a paranoid man who feared people would steal his secrets, so he refused to sell to the big corporations. He eventually died of starvation in a tiny shack, and his incredible wireless equipment was found rotting in the dirt by his neighbors. Did the cell phone revolution actually start a century before we think it did? 51. What if you could pull enough clean electricity right out of the damp soil in your backyard to power every single light in your house for free? In the 19th century, inventors developed the earth battery, which used two different metal plates buried in the ground to capture the natural currents flowing through our planet. These devices were so powerful they could run telegraph lines for miles without any external batteries or coal power, and they never seemed to run out of juice. Despite their incredible potential, the technology was abandoned once the big power companies realized they couldn't charge you for electricity you dug up in your garden. Why did we trade free dirt power for expensive monthly bills? 52. Can you imagine a massive power plant that generates endless energy simply by using the temperature difference between the warm surface of the ocean and the cold, deep water? In 1930, a French engineer built a giant ocean thermal energy conversion plant that successfully produced electricity using nothing but the power of the sea. Shortly after it started working, the entire facility was conveniently destroyed by a sudden storm that many locals suspected was actually a case of corporate sabotage. The engineering data was buried for decades, and the project was dismissed as a total failure, even though the science was absolutely rock solid. Are the secrets to unlimited green energy currently resting at the bottom of the ocean? 53. Have you ever heard of an engine that used a mysterious blend of noble gases to run for months at a time without needing any fuel or exhaust? Joseph Papp demonstrated his incredible noble gas engine to the public, and even had famous observers watch as it produced massive amounts of power from a tiny sealed cylinder. During one high-stakes demonstration in front of investors, the engine suddenly exploded under suspicious circumstances and killed an observer, which effectively ended the project forever. Many people believe the accident was staged to discredit the inventor because his engine threatened to make every gas station on Earth totally obsolete overnight. Was this a tragic lab mistake or a deadly corporate hit? 54. Would you believe that there was once a secret liquid chemical that could turn liquid cement into solid rock in just a few seconds using sound waves? This mysterious method of creating ultrasonic cement allowed builders in the early 20th century to finish massive construction projects in half the time it takes today. The process involved vibrating the wet mixture at a specific frequency that caused the molecules to bond instantly, which created a structure stronger than any modern concrete we have now. The technique was lost when the lead researchers died in a plane crash, and the blueprints for the ultrasonic oscillators were never recovered from the wreckage. Why are we still waiting weeks for our sidewalks to dry? 55. Did you know that Victorian inventors actually designed a device called the telephonoscope that was supposed to allow people to see each other through wires over 100 years ago? This steampunk version of FaceTime used a complex system of spinning mirrors and light sensors to transmit a live video image across the country. Although the concepts were scientifically sound and the designs were published in major magazines, the project was never fully funded by the skeptical investors of the day. It took another century for us to finally get the technology that our great-grandparents were already dreaming about in their fancy hats. Did the Victorian age almost have its very own high-speed internet? 56. What if I told you that a man once sued the city of San Diego because he actually created too much rain and caused a massive flood that destroyed a dam? In 1916, Charles Hatfield was hired to end a terrible drought, and he used a secret mixture of chemicals on a giant tower to pull water out of the sky. It rained so hard that the local reservoir overflowed and washed away entire houses, which led the city to refuse to pay him for his work. Hatfield took his secret chemical recipe to his grave, fearing that the government would use his weather control for war instead of helping thirsty farmers. Who currently owns the secret to making it rain on command? 57. Why are we still using heavy lead batteries in our cars when a super light battery with 10 times the capacity was invented decades ago? The zinc air battery uses the oxygen in the surrounding air as a fuel source, and it could theoretically allow an electric car to drive for 1,000 miles on a single charge. This technology has been ready for the mainstream market for years, but it has been consistently held back by lobbyists who represent the traditional battery and oil industries. Every time a company gets close to mass producing them, the project mysteriously loses funding or gets tied up in legal battles over tiny patents. Are we being forced to use old batteries just for profit? 58. Can you imagine a personal hovercraft from the 50s that allowed a soldier to fly over obstacles just by leaning their body in the direction they wanted to go? The flying platform was a real military project that used a powerful ducted fan to lift a person into the air like a high-tech Segway from the future. The test pilots absolutely loved the machine because it was incredibly intuitive to fly and much easier to handle than a bulky and expensive helicopter. The government suddenly deemed it too dangerous for the average soldier and canceled the entire program while hiding the prototypes in a dusty museum. Why aren't we all zipping to work on our own flying platforms? 59. Did you know the United States government once had a serious plan to use nuclear bombs as giant shovels to dig new canals and harbors across the country? Project Plowshare was an insane engineering program that aimed to use controlled atomic explosions to move millions of tons of earth in a single second for massive construction projects. They even considered nuking a path through a mountain range to build a highway, before they realized the radioactive fallout might be a bit of a problem for the neighbors. The project was eventually buried under a mountain of classified paperwork, and the public was told it was a total failure for safety reasons. Was this a crazy idea or a lost super tool? 60. Have you ever heard the story of the top-secret spy cat that was surgically implanted with a microphone and an antenna to eavesdrop on the Soviets? The CIA spent millions of dollars on Project Acoustic Kitty, and they actually managed to turn a regular house cat into a living walking surveillance device for the government. During its first real-world mission, the cat was released near a park bench to spy on two men, but it was immediately hit by a taxi and killed before it could hear a single word. The government quickly erased the project files and pretended the whole thing never happened because they were embarrassed by the feline failure. What other animals have been drafted into Secret Service? 61. Have you ever wondered if the government could literally read your mind using a top-secret computer interface developed way back in the 1970s? Early DARPA research focused on a primitive brain-computer connection that allegedly allowed test subjects to move objects on a screen just by thinking about them. While we see this today as cutting-edge medical tech, the original results from those early military experiments were suddenly classified and scrubbed from public scientific journals. Rumors suggest the researchers achieved a level of mind control that was so effective, it scared the high-ranking generals into hiding the technology forever. Are our private thoughts truly safe, or was the code for the human brain cracked decades ago? 62. Can you imagine a machine gun with a barrel that was intentionally bent at a 90-degree angle so you could shoot around corners without ever showing your face? The Krumlauf was a real German invention from the Second World War that featured a curved attachment and a periscope sight for urban combat in narrow streets. While it sounds like a total cheat code for soldiers, the bullets would often shatter inside the curved barrel and turn the gun into a ticking time bomb for the person holding it. The project was eventually erased from military history because the barrels would explode after only a few hundred rounds were fired. Why didn't they just keep working on the world's first corner shot? 63. What if the entire world was almost thrown into a total panic by a Soviet discovery of a brand new form of water that was thicker and deadlier than the regular stuff? In the late 60s, scientists claimed to have created polywater, which was a mysterious substance that was supposedly so stable it could turn the entire ocean into a giant block of jelly. The West went into a total frenzy trying to replicate the experiment, fearing a global environmental disaster that would end life as we know it on Earth. Eventually, the scientific community claimed it was all just a big mistake caused by dirty test tubes, and the whole thing was erased from textbooks. Was it really a mistake or a suppressed weapon? 64. Would you believe that you could once buy a toy at the local mall that came with real samples of deadly polonium and uranium for kids to play with? The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab was a real product sold in the early 50s that encouraged children to conduct their own nuclear experiments right on the living room rug. It included a real Geiger counter and actual radioactive ores, so little Jimmy could learn about the power of the atom before dinner time. The toy was eventually pulled from the shelves and erased from toy history because having radioactive materials in a child's bedroom turned out to be a very bad idea. How did this ever pass a safety inspection? 65. Have you ever noticed that a toy you loved as a kid suddenly vanished from the face of the earth because it was deemed a lethal weapon by the government? Lawn darts were massive heavy metal spikes that families used to toss across the yard during summer barbecues until they started causing serious injuries and even deaths. The government didn't just ban them, but they actually launched a massive campaign to forcibly remove every single set from existence and make it illegal to sell them. They were so effective at erasing this toy that finding an original set today is like finding a piece of forbidden military hardware from a secret base. Why were we allowed to throw spears at each other? 66. Can you imagine a flying car that looks like a high-tech red Ferrari with wings that has been stuck in a legal nightmare for over 40 years? Paul Mahler invented the M400 Sky Car, which was a vertical takeoff vehicle designed to cruise at 300 miles per hour and park right in your regular garage. Despite successful flight demonstrations and millions of dollars in investment, the project was constantly blocked by government regulations and red tape until the inventor went totally broke. The dream of a flying car in every driveway was slowly erased from the news cycle as the company faded into a series of endless lawsuits and delays. Will we ever be allowed to skip the traffic? 67. What if every single road in America was replaced by high-tech solar panels that could power the entire country and melt snow automatically during the winter? Solar freaking roadways became a viral internet sensation, promising a futuristic world of glowing highways and self-charging electric cars that would never need a gas station again. Despite raising millions of dollars from excited people, the project was suddenly attacked by skeptics and the government, who claimed the engineering was totally impossible and a waste of money. The hype died down almost overnight, and the revolutionary idea was largely erased and labeled as a failed experiment by the mainstream media. Was the dream of solar roads killed by the asphalt lobby? 68. Did you know that during the First World War, a massive tank was built that looked like a giant bicycle wheel and could roll over almost any obstacle? The monowheel tank was a bizarre design that featured a central armored cabin suspended inside a massive rotating outer shell that protected the crew from enemy fire. It was supposed to be the ultimate desert weapon, but during testing, the giant wheel proved to be incredibly difficult to steer and would often get stuck in the mud like a helpless turtle. The military quickly scrapped the prototype and erased the blueprints because they were embarrassed by the ridiculous-looking machine. Could a giant rolling ball have actually won the Great War? 69. What if we could harvest an infinite amount of clean energy from the trillions of ghost particles that pass through your body and the entire Earth every single second? Neutrino power is a theoretical technology that uses specialized layers of graphene to capture the kinetic energy of subatomic particles that are constantly streaming from the sun and distant stars. For years, scientists laughed at this idea and called it a total fantasy. But recently, patents have emerged that suggest a working device might actually exist in secret labs. The technology is constantly delayed or hidden from the public because it would provide a free power source that nobody can control or meter. Are we ignoring the stars to pay for coal? 70. Can you imagine a battery the size of a postage stamp that could charge your entire smartphone in 10 seconds and last for over 30 years? Graphene supercapacitors are a revolutionary technology that could replace every bulky lithium battery on the planet with a much safer and more efficient power source that never wears out. Despite the fact that laboratories have proven this works perfectly, the technology is constantly reported as being 10 years away from reaching the actual consumer market. Many people believe that the multi-billion-dollar battery industry is intentionally suppressing this discovery to keep us buying replacements every 2 years. Why are we still waiting for the battery that never dies? 71. Have you ever heard about the Japanese car that could travel 60 miles per hour using nothing but a single liter of common river water? In 2008, a company called Genepax unveiled a revolutionary water-powered vehicle that used an internal membrane to break down H2O and release a constant stream of electrons for power. It was a global media sensation for exactly 1 day before the company suddenly went completely silent and shut down their entire operation, citing a mysterious lack of funds. All their prototypes were hidden away, and the engineers refused to speak to the press ever again about their incredible liquid fuel discovery. Did the water car get drowned by the giants of the oil industry? 72. What if a brilliant inventor discovered a way to create a massive vortex of energy that could lift a heavy aircraft without using a single drop of fuel? Victor Schauberger was an Austrian scientist who built the implosion engine, which used the natural power of swirling water and air to create a powerful anti-gravity effect. During the Second World War, his secret laboratory was raided, and his prototypes were reportedly seized by the United States military to be studied in deep underground bunkers. The designs for his vortex power were never released to the public, and the official records claim the technology was a total scientific impossibility. Why did the Army steal a machine that supposedly didn't even work? 73. How did a single 5-foot-tall man move massive blocks of coral, weighing over 30 tons each, to build a giant castle all by himself? Edward Leeds Calnan built Coral Castle in Florida using secret magnetic techniques that he claimed allowed him to understand the laws of weight and leverage, just like the ancient Egyptians. Neighbors reported seeing the heavy stones floating through the air like balloons, while Edward worked alone under the cover of total darkness at night. When he died in 1951, he took his secrets of magnetic construction to his grave, leaving behind a massive mystery that modern engineers still cannot explain today. Did one man truly rediscover the lost secret of the pyramids in Florida? 74. Have you ever wondered why the British military built a massive rocket-powered wheel that was designed to explode on contact with an enemy seawall? The Great Panjandrum was a bizarre experimental weapon that featured 2 giant wooden wheels filled with rockets that were supposed to zoom across the beach at high speeds. During the secret trials, the rockets would often fly off in random directions, and the giant wheel would chase the high-ranking generals down the beach in a total panic. The project was immediately erased from the official invasion plans because it was far more dangerous to the British than it was to the enemy. Could a giant exploding wheel have changed the course of history? 75. Did you know that the military once tried to create a tiny living arsonist by strapping miniature napalm bombs to the chests of thousands of bats? This specific variant of the bat bomb was designed to be released over enemy cities where the bats would hide in the wooden attics before the timers went off. During a high-stakes demonstration, the bats escaped and accidentally burned down a brand-new multi-million-dollar hangar and the general's personal staff car in seconds. The project was so embarrassing and unpredictable that the government classified the results and pretended the tiny flying fire starters never existed in their official records. Why was the world's weirdest weapon hidden from the public for decades? 76. What if I told you that a scientist successfully trained a group of pigeons to pilot a guided missile with perfect accuracy using only a tiny screen? Project Pigeon was a real military operation led by B.F. Skinner, where 3 birds were placed inside the nose cone of a bomb to peck at targets and steer the weapon. The tests were a massive success, and the pigeons proved to be better pilots than any mechanical computer available at the time in the 1940s. The government eventually canceled the program because they thought the idea of bird pilots sounded too ridiculous to explain to the American public. Did we trade nature's perfect guidance system for expensive and buggy electronics? 77. Can you imagine a personal jetpack platform that allowed a soldier to stand upright and fly through the air like a superhero from a comic book? The Williams X-Jet was a real vertical takeoff craft that was incredibly easy to maneuver and could fly at speeds of 60 miles per hour for nearly 30 minutes. The military pilots who tested the machine absolutely loved it, but the generals suddenly canceled the project, claiming it was too loud and vulnerable to enemy fire. Many people suspect the project actually went black ops because the technology was too advanced to let civilians see it flying around their neighborhoods. Are we being denied our own personal flight because of military secrets? 78. Have you ever seen a giant 4-legged mechanical beast that could walk over mountains while carrying thousands of pounds of heavy military equipment? The walking truck was a real cybernetic machine built by General Electric in the 60s that used a complex hydraulic system to mimic the movements of a human. The operator could actually feel the ground through the machine's legs, which made it surprisingly agile for a giant metal monster in the woods. The The project was suddenly erased from the budget because the military claimed it leaked too much oil and was too complicated for the average soldier to maintain. Did they hide the first real AT-AT walker to keep us using tires? 79. What if a city could run its entire transit system using nothing but air pressure to push trains through tubes like a giant office mail system? The atmospheric railway was a real invention used in the 19th century that featured a central vacuum pipe that sucked trains along the tracks at incredible speeds. The system worked perfectly and was much cleaner than the old coal engines until rats began eating the leather seals on the air pipes and caused the whole thing to fail. Instead of fixing the seals, the companies abandoned the clean technology and went back to using dirty and expensive steam power for their profit. Did a few hungry rats destroy the future of clean, high-speed travel? 80. Did you know that a man secretly built a high-tech pneumatic subway under the streets of New York City in 1870 without any official permits? Alfred Beach used a massive fan to blow a luxurious passenger car through a hidden tunnel to prove that air-powered travel was the future of the busy city. He kept the project a total secret by hauling dirt out in the middle of the night until he finally revealed the beautiful station to a shocked and excited public. Political bosses who were invested in the old horse-drawn carriages quickly shut him down and sealed the tunnel behind a brick wall for decades. Why was the cleanest subway in history buried and forgotten for 50 years? 81. Have you ever wondered why we use expensive electric streetlights when our ancestors used simple glass lanterns that glowed brighter than the sun? Carbide lamps were a genius 19th century invention that used a chemical reaction between water and calcium stone to create a brilliant acetylene flame for miners and drivers. This technology was incredibly cheap and provided a warm, natural light that could cut through the thickest fog or darkest cave with ease. Suddenly, the major electrical companies pushed for a total transition to the grid, and these reliable lamps were systematically phased out of the market. Now, the specific chemical mixtures and high-quality lamp designs have become a lost art form preserved only in museums. Why did we trade a portable sun for a monthly light bill? 82. Can you imagine a massive mechanical eye that could see all the way across the Atlantic Ocean using a series of mirrors and wires in the 1800s? The telectroscope was a futuristic design intended to link London and New York with a live visual connection long before the invention of the modern television. Inventors published detailed blueprints showing how light could be converted into electrical pulses and sent through underwater cables to project a moving image on the other side of the world. Despite the massive public excitement, the project was never built because the telecommunications monopolies of the day refused to share their precious cable lines. Did the Victorian era almost have its own version of a global video call? 83. What if the man who actually invented the telephone was totally erased from history because he was just a few hours late to the patent office? Elisha Gray filed his paperwork for a working telephone on the exact same day as Alexander Graham Bell, but he ended up in a brutal legal battle that lasted for years. While Bell became a household name and a billionaire, Elisha was labeled as a footnote, and his superior designs for liquid transmitters were largely ignored by the history books. Many historians believe that a secret tip from a corrupt patent clerk gave Bell the edge he needed to steal the glory and the massive fortune. Why does every school kid know Bell but nobody remembers the man he beat to the punch? 84. Did you know there is an ancient map from 1513 that shows the coastline of Antarctica with perfect detail hundreds of years before the continent was officially discovered? The Piri Reis map was drawn by an Ottoman admiral who claimed he used even older source maps from the Library of Alexander to show the land without any ice. Modern satellite imagery has confirmed that the map matches the subglacial mountain ranges that have been buried under miles of frozen water for at least 6,000 years. This means an ancient civilization must have mapped the entire planet with advanced technology long before the recorded history of man began. Who were the master sailors that possessed this forbidden knowledge of our Earth? 85. Have you ever heard about a massive machine in New Mexico that creates mysterious energy spikes so powerful they actually baffle the world's smartest physicists? The Z machine is a giant fusion research device that uses massive bursts of electricity to create temperatures hotter than the center of the sun in a fraction of a second. During several secret experiments, the machine produced way more energy than it consumed and emitted weird pulses that seemed to defy the known laws of thermodynamics. Instead of celebrating a breakthrough in free energy, the results were quieted down and the facility was moved into a highly restricted research phase. Are we on the verge of a power revolution that is being kept behind a chain-link fence? 86. Would you believe there is a special type of gas that can create a flame so smart it can melt a tungsten rod but won't even burn a human hand? Brown's gas is a unique mixture of hydrogen and oxygen that produces a concentrated beam of heat that reacts differently depending on the material it touches. It can instantly sublimate the hardest metals on Earth into vapor while remaining cool enough for an inventor to stick his finger right through the purple flame. This incredible technology could revolutionize manufacturing and hazardous waste disposal, but it has been consistently pushed to the fringes of the scientific community. Why are we still using primitive torches when this magical fire exists in the shadows? 87. Can you imagine a spiral escalator that looks like a high-tech DNA strand and allows people to glide between floors in a beautiful sweeping curve? In the early 1900s, inventors built these magnificent curving walkways to prove that the future of architecture was limited only by our own wild imaginations. Shortly after they were installed in several major department stores, the government ordered them removed because they claimed the curving mechanism was a safety hazard for the public. The blueprints were filed away and the technology was largely erased in favor of the boring straight escalators we are forced to stand on today. Why did we trade futuristic elegance for a world of straight lines and dull designs? 88. What if I told you that high-speed moving sidewalks existed in the streets of Paris over 120 years ago and they worked perfectly? During the 1900 World's Fair, a massive elevated walkway carried thousands of people around the city at several different speeds without a single engine or drop of gasoline. It was a total engineering marvel that promised to end traffic congestion forever, by allowing people to simply step onto a platform and zoom to their destination. After the fair ended, the massive structure was dismantled for scrap metal, and the revolutionary idea was erased from urban planning for over a century. Why are we still stuck in traffic when the solution was built in 1900? 89. Have you ever seen a train that balances on a single rail using a giant spinning gyroscope to stay perfectly upright, even while standing totally still? The monorail gyro was a futuristic transportation system from the early 20th century that could travel at high speeds and take sharp turns that would derail a normal train. It required much less land and material to build than a standard railroad, making it the most efficient way to link distant cities across the American frontier. Despite successful full-scale demonstrations, the funding was mysteriously killed by the traditional railroad barons who didn't want their expensive double tracks to become obsolete. Did corporate greed kill the coolest and fastest train in history? 90. What if you could drive a car that ran entirely on compressed air and produced nothing but fresh, breathable oxygen from its tailpipe? A massive company called Tata announced they were developing a car that used air tanks to push pistons and could be refueled at any gas station with a simple air compressor. The project was a global sensation and promised to end our dependence on oil forever by using the very air we breathe to power our daily commutes. Suddenly, the news coverage vanished, and the aircar prototypes disappeared from the public eye without a single word of explanation from the developers. Why did the cleanest car in the history of the world suddenly run out of breath? 91. Did you know that a group of scientists once built a massive indoor world called Biosphere 2 to prove that humans could survive on Mars? This giant glass dome in Arizona was a totally closed ecosystem with its own rainforest and ocean, but the mission turned into a chaotic disaster filled with secret oxygen leaks and infighting. The researchers began to starve as the crops failed, and the ants took over the entire facility while the outside world watched the drama unfold, like a reality show. The data from the failure was largely buried, and the project was sold off to a university where it became a quiet tourist attraction instead of a space base. What did they really find out about the human mind in total isolation? 92. Can you imagine a motorized unicycle from the 1930s that looked like a giant hamster wheel for humans and could reach speeds of 30 miles per hour? The Dynasphere was a bizarre invention where the driver sat inside the wheel and steered by leaning their weight while a small engine spun the outer rim. It was marketed as the vehicle of the future because it was incredibly stable and used much less space on the road than a traditional bulky car. Despite the fun design, the project was erased because the military claimed it was too difficult to mount weapons on a giant rolling circle. Why aren't we all rolling to work in giant metal hoops like futuristic circus performers? 93. What if I told you the Soviet Union built a massive plane the size of a building that could fly just a few feet above the water at 300 miles per hour? The Ukranoplan was a terrifying sea monster that used ground effect physics to carry hundreds of tons of cargo and missiles across the ocean while remaining invisible to enemy radar. It was a total masterpiece of engineering that made the United States military absolutely shake with fear during the peak of the Cold War. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the program was immediately erased and the giant planes were left to rot in a remote harbor as secret scrap metal. Why did we abandon the fastest and largest transport ships ever built by man? 94. Have you ever seen a flying jeep with two massive rotors that was designed to hop over minefields and zoom through the forest like a mechanical grasshopper? The Piasecki Air Jeep was a real military project from the 50s that proved a small flat vehicle could hover and fly with incredible precision in tight spaces. The pilots loved the machine because it was easy to hide and could land almost anywhere without needing a long and expensive runway. The Army suddenly pulled the plug on the project and hid the prototypes in a secret hangar, claiming that helicopters were the only way forward for the military. Was the flying jeep too cheap and effective for the high-budget military-industrial complex? 95. What if a train could go 180 miles per hour back in the 60s using two massive jet engines strapped to the roof? The M497 Black Beetle was an experimental train car that used leftover engines from a bomber plane to set a speed record that still stands in America today. During the test runs, the train went so fast it started to literally lift off the tracks, and the vibrations began to shake the entire structure apart like a toy. Instead of refining the technology, the rail companies got scared and scrapped the engines while erasing the project from their future plans for public travel. Why are our modern trains so much slower than a prototype from 60 years ago? 96. Did you know the CIA once built a massive secret ship with a giant mechanical claw just to steal a sunken Soviet submarine from the bottom of the ocean? Project Azorian was one of the most expensive and complex covert operations in history, involving a custom-built vessel called the Hughes Glomar Explorer. They pretended the ship was for deep-sea mining, while they actually spent years trying to grab a nuclear sub 3 miles under the surface of the water. The mission was partially successful, but the government kept the details erased from the public record for decades to avoid a major international incident. How much more of our history is currently sitting at the bottom of the dark sea? 97. Have you ever wondered why we didn't have high-speed magnetic trains in America back in the 60s, when the technology was already proven to work? Maglev trains use powerful magnets to float above the tracks and can travel at incredible speeds without ever touching the ground or creating friction. While Germany and Japan embraced the future, the United States government was heavily lobbied by the tire and asphalt industries to keep the country stuck on the roads. The early American maglev patents were bought up and buried in corporate vaults to ensure that we kept buying cars and gasoline for another 50 years. Why are we still driving on wheels when we could be flying on magnets? 98. What if we could have a safer form of nuclear energy that produces almost zero waste and cannot be used to create a deadly atomic bomb? Thorium reactors use a common mineral that is much more abundant than uranium, and they are designed to automatically shut down if anything ever goes wrong in the core. During the 1960s, the United States actually built a working thorium reactor, but the project was suddenly killed because the military wanted reactors that produce plutonium for warheads. We traded a clean and safe energy future for a stockpile of weapons and a mountain of radioactive waste that will last for thousands of years. Did we choose the wrong element just to win a war? 99. Did you know that electric cars were actually more popular than gasoline cars in the year 1910, before a secret conspiracy erased them from the streets? Early electric vehicles were quiet and clean, and they were the preferred choice for people living in the big cities because they didn't require a hand crank to start. Everything changed when the oil companies and car makers introduced the electric starter for gas engines and began a massive smear campaign against the battery-powered competition. Within a decade, the electric car was totally erased from the market, and the world was locked into a 100-year addiction to the gas pump. What would our air look like today if the electric car had won the first round? 100. Have you ever felt like nobody would ever want to use a video phone because you would have to get dressed up just to answer a simple call? In the 1960s, Bell Labs introduced the picture phone, which allowed people to see each other in real time while they talked across the country. The project was a massive technical success, but it was a total commercial failure because people found the idea of being seen in their pajamas to be totally terrifying and invasive. The company eventually erased the project and destroyed the expensive equipment, thinking that humans would never want to see each other on a screen. How did a billion-dollar failure in the 60s become the most common tool we use today? 101. What if you could fly from New York to London in under 3 hours while sipping champagne in a cabin that cruised faster than a rifle bullet? The Concorde was a legendary supersonic airliner that made the world feel small by traveling at twice the speed of sound and soaring above the clouds where the sky turns dark. Despite being a masterpiece of engineering, the project was plagued by noise complaints and massive fuel costs that made the big airlines absolutely hate the competition. The government eventually grounded the entire fleet and erased supersonic travel from our lives, leaving us stuck in slow and cramped planes for the last 20 years. Why did we decide to go backwards in time and lose the ability to fly fast? 102. Have you ever seen a plane so massive that it was built entirely out of wood and featured 8 giant engines just to get its heavy body off the water? The Spruce Goose was Howard Hughes's dream of a giant flying boat that could carry hundreds of soldiers across the ocean without ever worrying about enemy submarines. Because of a wartime metal shortage, Hughes used birch wood to construct the largest wingspan in history, and he successfully flew the beast for 1 glorious minute in 1947. Shortly after the test flight, the government cut the funding, and the giant wooden bird was locked away in a dark hangar for decades like a forbidden secret. Was it a brilliant success or just an expensive pile of lumber that scared the military? 103. Imagine a car so advanced that it featured a swiveling center headlight and a crash-padded dashboard decades before safety was even a thing. The Tucker 48 was the brainchild of Preston Tucker, who wanted to build a futuristic vehicle that actually protected the people inside instead of just looking cool. The big 3 car companies in Detroit went into a total state of panic and allegedly used their political connections to ruin Tucker's reputation with a series of fake lawsuits. He was eventually found innocent of all charges, but his company was already bankrupt, and his revolutionary safety designs were erased from the market for years. Did the car giants kill the safest vehicle ever made just to save their own skin? 104. What if a car could turn on a dime and carry 11 people while looking like a shiny silver spaceship from a 1930s comic book? The Dymaxion car was a 3-wheeled aerodynamic wonder, designed by Buckminster Fuller that could reach nearly 100 miles per hour using a tiny engine. It was supposed to be the future of transportation, but a tragic high-profile crash during a demonstration gave the media the perfect excuse to call it a death trap. The project was immediately erased from the history books, and the funding disappeared overnight, leaving the world stuck with boxy and inefficient cars for the next century. Was this a genuine design flaw or a calculated hit piece by the competition? 105. Have you ever wondered why our cars are shaped like bricks when a German inventor built a perfectly aerodynamic vehicle way back in 1921? The Rumpler Tropfenwagen was shaped like a falling raindrop to slice through the wind with almost zero resistance, and it featured a futuristic mid-engine design. Even though it was incredibly fuel-efficient and way ahead of its time, the public hated the weird looks, and the car became a total commercial failure. The majority of these revolutionary machines were eventually rounded up and destroyed, or used as props in movies where they were blown up for entertainment. Why did we trade perfect scientific physics for a world of boring and clunky car designs? 106. Could you imagine a mysterious machine that claimed to cure total blindness by using secret electrical currents to stimulate the dead nerves in a person's eyes? The Phantom Oculist was a device that appeared in the early 20th century and gained a massive following of people who swore they regained their sight after just a few treatments. Instead of investigating the technology, the medical boards of the time immediately labeled it as a total hoax and chased the inventors out of town before they could prove their results. The machines were seized and smashed by authorities, and all the patient records were burned to ensure nobody could ever use the technology again. Was this a heartless scam or a miracle that the doctors hated? 107. Did you know that Nikola Tesla once claimed he could shake a massive steel skyscraper to the ground using a tiny vibrating device that fit inside his pocket? He was testing his earthquake machine in his New York laboratory when the vibrations became so intense that the police and fire departments came rushing to the scene in a total panic. Tesla had to smash the device with a hammer to stop the building from collapsing, and he later warned that he could split the entire Earth in half if he wanted to. The government was so terrified of a portable weapon that could destroy a city for pennies that they erased the research immediately. Is the secret to the earthquake machine hidden in a vault? 108. What if the military developed a secret technology that could make an entire massive warship completely invisible to the naked eye and enemy radar? The Philadelphia experiment is a legendary story about a Navy destroyer that allegedly disappeared in a flash of blue light and reappeared hundreds of miles away in just a few seconds. According to the rumors, the experiment went horribly wrong, and the crew members were found fused into the steel hull of the ship when it finally returned to the harbor. The government has spent decades erasing every single record of the event and claiming it was just a wild urban legend to hide the truth about teleportation. Did they really master the fabric of space and time? 109. Have you ever heard of a mysterious humming metal bell that could allegedly defy gravity and travel through the air without any visible wings or engines? The Nazi bell was a top-secret project called Die Glock that involved spinning massive amounts of liquid mercury at high speeds to create a glowing violet energy field. Witnesses claimed the device was so powerful it could warp the very air around it and cause the deaths of several scientists who got too close to the radiation. When the war ended, the bell and its inventor completely vanished from the face of the Earth, leaving behind only a giant concrete structure in a forest. Did the world's first anti-gravity machine escape into the stars? 110. What if the greatest library in the history of the world was intentionally burned to the ground to keep humanity in the dark for thousands of years? The Library of Alexandria contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls that held the secret inventions and scientific breakthroughs of the ancient world that we are only just rediscovering today. When the library was destroyed during ancient wars, the collective knowledge of medicine and engineering and astronomy was erased in a single massive fire that changed the course of human history. We might have been living in a high-tech space age centuries ago if those precious documents hadn't been turned into piles of gray ash. Was the fire an accident or a deliberate act of sabotage? 111. Could you imagine a world where every single invention we just talked about was actually part of one massive hidden timeline that the government is desperate to keep a secret? From water-powered cars to free energy towers and ancient computers. It seems like every time a genius changes the world, their work is stolen or destroyed by the elite. We are told that we live in the most advanced age ever, but the evidence suggests that we are actually living in a shadow of a much greater past that was taken from us. The real question is whether these inventions are gone forever, or if they are just waiting for someone brave enough to find them again. Are you ready to help uncover the truth of our erased history? So, is our modern world a high-tech masterpiece? Or are we just living in the scrap heap of a much cooler future that got deleted by greedy billionaires? If your brain is currently melting from these forbidden facts, smash that like button and subscribe to Dumb History before the government erases this channel too. Comment below which invention you'd bring back first, the water car or the death ray, and share this with a friend to keep the conspiracy alive. Now, if you think these were wild, click the video on your screen right now to see the even weirder secrets they don't want you to know. Stay curious, stay dumb, and I'll see you in the next one.